Buenas noches, me llamo Dena y por más de 22 años he dedicado mi vida a compartir la historia y la música del compositor español Joaquin Rodrigo. Me siento muy honrada de poder estar aquí con ustedes para agregar a la narrativa de este gran compositor. Aunque hablo un poquito de español, prefiero hablar en inglés para expresarme claramente y sin errores en transmitir la información. Gracias por su comprensión y por estar aquí conmigo. Good evening. My name is Dena K. Jones, and for more than 22 years I've been dedicated to the life, story, and music of the Spanish composer Joaquin Rodrigo. I'm very honored to be here with all of you, and thank you tonight for being here. I know there's other places that you could be, so I'm very touched that you're here with me tonight. And although I do speak a little bit of Spanish, I'm going to be speaking mostly in English this evening, just so that I express myself clearly and hopefully without too many errors in giving you this information about this beautiful man. En el cielo, todos seremos sonidos. In heaven, we all will be sounds. And so, today I'd like to begin with a brief synopsis of what I have learned and shared in the past. Joaquin Rodrigo was born in Sagunto, Valencia, Spain, on St. Cecilia's Day, the patron saint of music, November 22nd, 1901. At the age of 3, he lost his sight almost completely as a result of an epidemic of diphtheria. As he himself was later to affirm, this event undoubtedly led to a vocation towards music. At the age of 8, he began his first musical studies, solfege and music theory, piano and violin, and from the age of 16, harmony and composition with teachers from the Conservatoire in Valencia, Francisco Antique, Enrique Goma, and Eduardo Lopez Chavarri. His first compositions date from 1923, Suite for piano, Dos Esbozos, or 2 sketches, for violin and piano, and Siciliana for cello. In 1924, his first work for orchestra, Juglares, was premiered in Valencia and Madrid, and he obtained a diploma in a national competition for the orchestral work, Cinco Piezas Infantiles, which was later premiered in Paris by the Straw Room Orchestra. From the outset of his career, Rodrigo wrote all his works in Braille, dictating them subsequently to a copyist. In 1927, following the example of his predecessors Albéniz, Falla, Granados, and Turina, Rodrigo moved to Paris to enroll at the École Normale de Musique, where he studied for 5 years with Paul Dukas, who had a particular affection for his Spanish pupil. Rodrigo soon became known as both pianist and composer and became friendly with Honegger, Milhaud, Ravel, and many other musical celebrities of the time, among them Manuel de Falla, whose advice and support would be decisive in his career. In 1933, he married the Turkish pianist Victoria Kamhi, who thenceforth, until her death in 1997, became his inseparable companion and the most important collaborator in all aspects of his work as a composer. He continued his studies of musicology in France at the Paris Conservatoire and at the Sorbonne, and also worked in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland before returning to Spain in 1939 to settle permanently in Madrid. In 1940, the world premiere took place in Barcelona of the Concierto de Aranjuez for guitar and orchestra, a definitive example of his musical personality and a work which would bring him worldwide fame. From that moment on, Rodrigo was engaged in numerous artistic activities, both creative and academic, with the following positions being of particular significance: Professor of the History of Music at the Complutense University of Madrid, Head of Music Broadcasts for Spanish Radio, Music Critic for several newspapers, and Head of the Artistic Section of the Spanish National Organization for the Blind, ONCE. He was also invited to undertake tours as lecturer and pianist throughout Spain and the rest of Europe, Latin America, the United States, Israel, and Japan. Accompanied by his wife, Victoria, he frequently attended competitions and festivals dedicated to his music throughout the world. The music of Joaquin Rodrigo is an homage to the rich and varied cultures of Spain. No other Spanish composer has drawn on so many different aspects of his country's spirit as sources of inspiration, from the history of Roman Spain to the work of contemporary poets. His music is refined, luminous, fundamentally optimistic, with a particular predominance of melody and with original harmonies. Joaquin Rodrigo died at his home in Madrid on July 6, 1999, surrounded by his family, with the principal aim of ensuring the preservation and dissemination of Joaquin Rodrigo's music throughout the world. The composer's only daughter, Cecilia, who is married to the distinguished violinist Agustín León Ara, founded the publishing house of Ediciones Joaquin Rodrigo in 1989 and created the Victoria and Joaquin Rodrigo Foundation in 1999. This is the shortened biography of Rodrigo by the scholar Raymond Calcraft and taken from the official Joaquin Rodrigo webpage.
That's the old research. Tonight's concert shares new perceptions through a continuing and ever-changing study of this man, his music, his relationships, and his relevance in today's world. En la vida no sé es nada el primero, solo aspiré a ser Joaquin Rodrigo, pero mejorado. In life, you can never be first in anything. I only aspired to be an improved Joaquin Rodrigo. Well, why am I here tonight, and what's the difference between the old research and the new research? Permit me to try to explain. In 2019, while living in El Paso, Texas, and working as professor of music within the University of Texas at El Paso, otherwise known as UTEP, several timely influences hit my life. This was a year that marked the 10th anniversary of UTEP's 2009 International Joaquin Rodrigo Festival, and where in El Paso we held an interdisciplinary, this was the festival, in 2009 at the International Rodrigo Festival, it was in El Paso, and we held an interdisciplinary 4-day symposium dedicated to Rodrigo and his music. And his daughter Cecilia and her friend Catherine Zegarra traveled from Spain to be with us and were part of our symposium. 2019 also marked the 20th anniversary of the composer's death, and a horrific terrorist shooting at an El Paso Walmart also happened within my city. 22 people lost their lives simply for being Hispanic. For some reason, the combination of these events pushed my thoughts heavily to consider the unknown to me part of Rodrigo's life, his blindness. To me, it's been an interesting subject and a bit of a challenge from the onset when I began learning of this man in 2001. I discovered that Joaquin Rodrigo's wife, Victoria Kamhi, was not so eager to publicly acknowledge this life situation of her husband, and yet his daughter, Cecilia, She continues to be extremely open about her own perceptions of this part of her father. Both women held these personal opinions and experiences in differing ways from each other and even from the composer himself, whom to the public, of course, recognized that his life was different, but also embraced it. And truth be told, at least to the public, did not make too big of a deal about it. Yet in 2019, I was curious and had read quite a bit regarding Rodrigo's blindness through my research, and this caused me to start experimenting with something I didn't even know existed. I went under occlusion in playing Rodrigo's music in order to get a sense of what it felt like to be blind in doing so. What is the definition of under occlusion? The definition of occlusion is the shutting off or obstruction of something. In the community of the blind or visually impaired, when someone goes under occlusion, he or she who is sighted is cutting off the sense of seeing. And so, not knowing that this was a thing, I blocked out all light and I practiced the piece of Joaquin Rodrigo's music that is most intimate to me, his own piano transcription of the famous second movement from his Concierto de Aranjuez for guitar and orchestra. Yes, I played that piece over and over under occlusion. This was a completely different experience to me. I experienced frustration as I missed notes because I had to sense the movement of my fingers to the keys instead of seeing those motions with my eyes. I experienced fear as I knew I would hit incorrect pitches, dismissing the composer's true intentions of sound. And yet I also experienced a new and greater sense of hearing, as well as a greater intent of communication, from my feelings, through my hands, into the piano, from the sound close to me, transmitting to the ears of anyone listening further away from me. I also experienced a dependency within myself, an inexplicable search inside myself of my thoughts, my hearing, my breathing, even my heart beating, because I had no sight. And so at this point in tonight's concert, I'd like to invite you to go under occlusion if you'd like, just to experiment to see what you experience. Hopefully tonight you were given a blindfold when you entered, so this is the time to get it out and just make sure it's it's traveled from El Paso, Texas. So you want to just make sure that you've got it all the way unbound. If you would like to go under occlusion with me. And just tie this over your eyes. If you wear glasses, I would suggest you take your glasses off and then tie this, around your eyes so the house lights will also go down. So please, everybody just stay in your seats. And then we're gonna experience together. I'm gonna go under occlusion 2 and play Aranjuez Ma Pensé, which is a transcription from the famous guitar concerto. So enjoy. still have your blindfold on. Let's remove them. I took mine off before I walked over here so I wouldn't fall. Just please be careful with your eyes. So, what did you hear? What did you feel? How did you receive not only Rodrigo's communication, but hopefully my communication from the piano? What came next was a natural evolution. Why didn't I take Rodrigo's story into the schools for the blind and visually impaired? I wouldn't let go of the idea, was incredibly determined, and started looking for funding. After receiving a Career Enhancement Award from UTEP and with permission from Cecilia Rodrigo and using certain copyrighted material, I set out to put together an outreach program. Soon enough, however, I realized I was in a different community and needed mentoring through the process of putting this dream together. I was in over my head. Thank God for Lawrence Brown III. A percussionist, producer, and vocalist based in El Paso, Lawrence has served as music director for the San Francisco Lighthouse for the Blind. He is also dedicated to teen outreach work, such as his mentorship position in the El Paso Youth Leadership Forum and as guest lecturer at Guide Dogs of Hawaii. Lawrence is an instructor at the Academy for Music for the Blind and is working to become an orientation and mobility specialist. He was once my former student and is now my dear friend and colleague. After feeding Lawrence an awesome dinner with some beautiful red wine, where I explained my hopes and dreams for the next steps of my Rodrigo dissemination, I asked him if he would help me. Lawrence explained that he would help me, but only if I would go under occlusion. And it is here where I learned that going under occlusion is a thing, and it's a controversial thing. By this point in my occlusion journey, which started by coincidence, remember, I learned that I had already done that in an environment which, to be quite honest, is a place I have inhabited since I was 4 years old, seated behind a piano. I'm quite comfortable there. But his pact required I spend an entire day under occlusion at UTEP in order to get a larger picture of what one might experience. And so with Lawrence's help, I did it. The day started at 7 a.m. with my son placing me in an Uber with multiple blindfolds and my cane, and ended at 4 p.m. with one of my students returning me safely to my house, where I couldn't wait to take those blindfolds off and use my sight again. It was a difficult day for the following reasons. Fear. I was afraid of getting physically hurt. I didn't really know how to use the cane, although Lawrence and his guide dog Halo did provide me with the basic mental steps as Lawrence used his voice to teach me. It sort of was like entering a Spanish class where the teacher only speaks Spanish, learning through a submersion experience. It was scary, and the fear of falling, running into something, or getting hit myself was intense. Exhaustion. Thank God I'm sort of good at what I do and have been doing it for what seems like forever, because that day of teaching was exhausted. And I know my content of lecturing was solid, so it's not what I was teaching. There were 2 reasons I struggled. One was that my eyes kept trying to see. They kept widening and shooting my energy out of them as if I tried harder, they would suddenly have sight. I also felt like I had to yell, and so my energy was zapped quickly. Yet there was another reason. Many students and even my own colleagues' responses to me being under occlusion was hard for me to take. It seemed as if they completely withdrew from me. I received silence and even had students mock my attempts. I felt isolated and different, and it was a negative experience when I interacted with others for the most part. By the end of the day, this caused tears. Frustration. Questions like, why is this campus not more accessible to those with physical challenges? Why are those who are not challenged with disabilities so amazingly lazy, including myself? And even, why am I doing this, came to mind. But there were positive outcomes as well. Trusting others. As a single mother, I have learned to ask for help. But as we were at the time living in an age of a world pandemic, I'll admit my trust in others has faltered. People helped me throughout the day, and I had to trust them whether I wanted to or not. This was a pleasant surprise to know that no one let me down. Heightened senses. Just imagine your world without sight. It's cliche to say, but my other senses function in ways I'd never experienced before. It changed my perception of my world and comfort inside myself. I will honestly tell you, I found the most comfort within myself during the latter part of the day. I will also tell you it is possibly the most comfort in myself I've ever found in my entire life. The thing about going under occlusion is that at the end of the day, I could take my blindfolds off, reassess, and even enhance my world from the experience, and then go on as if nothing ever happened. This is not the case of someone who is blind or visually impaired. And this leads me to sharing the most challenging part of what I've discovered so far, how I think sighted people have vision and how I think blind people have vision. My outreach program for the Schools for the Blind is called Vision Through Sounds, because vision can be more than one thing. Vision can obviously be the objects one sees with one's eyes. However, arguably more complex is the way one can have a different type of vision. A vision that happens through experience, personal insight, dreams, and intuition regarding the past, present, and future. This type of vision doesn't require any sight at all, and in my opinion is even stronger because this requires one to dig deeper within oneself and in connecting with others. Anatomically, the vision as sight is easy for those who have it. I would dare say it is even taken for granted. The second type of vision, which includes planning for the future, containing wisdom and experiencing beyond sight, not only is this more difficult to acquire, but it is more substantial, I believe. More lessons are learned, self-development achieved, and stronger interaction amongst individuals is experienced at the core of this vision. Thus, the name Vision Through Sounds is a title that connects everyone. Basically, there are three components to Vision Through Sounds. The first part is a dramatization exploring the life of the composer from his point of view. This narration was originally produced as a CD recording by the publishing house Ediciones Joaquin Rodrigo, entitled El Niño que Soñó la Música, The Boy Who Dreamed Music. It has been translated into English and transformed to be the first part of this outreach. Multiple musical audio clips introduce the music of the composer and are heard throughout the dramatization. The second part is a live music performance, which allows children to transfer the knowledge they learned in the first part. This section also provides another opportunity for hearing more of the maestro's music. And the third part, one of the requirements of the outreach experience is that I meet with students and teachers after, sometimes immediately, sometimes the next day, to better understand those students who don't mind sharing what they are thinking or feeling. Vision Through Sounds had its debut at the Colorado School for the Blind in March of 2022, and was thereafter performed a second time at the Illinois School for the Visually Impaired in March of 2023, with students ranging in ages from 13 to 19. Each session with students was unique, with too many individual encounters to share today. However, I want to tell you a couple of interesting things. Did you realize that students who are blind have their own language they develop just from sounds? It's a dialogue that develops with different nonsensical words and noises like whistles, clicks of the tongue, and other effects. This language is based on experiences between individuals and others, and unless explained, makes no sense to anyone but them. Also, many students were excited to tell me how music has influenced their lives. They were emotional that an outsider, or someone who was a foreigner to their environment, would come to spend time with them, to interact with them, to listen to their thoughts, and so the verbal communication came freely, passionately, and truthfully. One student explained to me that although his teacher, with all the best intentions, had sent him and his classmates to a teenage dance with other sighted students, it was not until he attended a river dance performance of Irish clog dancing where he could begin to comprehend what dancing was. Unlike the sighted teenagers who basically swayed back and forth, holding on to each other without any sounds coming from their bodies, the river dancers articulated every step with their shoes. Have you ever thought of dancing steps as communication? Not by seeing those steps, but by hearing them? This is again a vision through sounds. Another example, Rodrigo incorporated bird calls into his music, as the narration explains. Nearly every student had some sort of reaction to this trademark of the composer. One girl actually giggled out loud uncontrollably with glee. And so now we will enjoy a small segment from the first part of the program, Vision Through Sounds, which you now know is communicated to students of schools for the blind and visually impaired, and therefore is to be experienced without sight. I will be reading all parts today, and all the musical excerpts you hear will be digital, unlike the in-time presentations for students, which utilize multiple readers, as well as includes live excerpts from myself on the piano. At this time, I want to invite you to go under occlusion again, tying your blindfold over your eyes if you like. Please relax. Be unaware of time passing if you can, and let your ears, your mind, and your heart be your guides. I'd like to tell you a story. Come and sit with me and listen to the words. Listen to the sounds too, and see it all in your imagination. Now, I'm not going to do all the work for you. I want you to imagine a child who can hardly see, but manages to find ways to amuse himself. At that time, there were no computers or television, cell phones or videos. He wasn't able to draw either. He loved sounds, the sound of children laughing or the rain in autumn. He enjoyed listening to all kinds of sounds and trying to combine them. Here's a guitar. violins, violas, and cellos. Over there is a trumpet. Can you hear these sounds? The violin, the guitar, the trumpet? Now listen to this. They're all combined. This is an orchestra. These musicians you hear playing, they love music. You probably do too. And the leading character of our story tried to imagine men, women, fountains, parks, birds, poems, storms, bells, guitars, and piano, all of them through sounds. When I met him, he was a little old man with long white hair and dark glasses that covered his blind eyes. He liked to sit at the piano, and while he let his fingers slide over the keys, he told me the story of his life. I can almost hear him now. That little old man was Joaquin Rodrigo. I was only 3 years old. One day I lost my sight. I remember my mother's hand on my forehead to check if I had fever. She never left my bedside. I was very sleepy. Everything became blurred. I could only see shapes and colors. I couldn't tell a tree from a lamppost. I couldn't see my mother, but I could hear her crying. I listened as the doctor spoke to my father. I don't believe the child will die, but he will never see again. And you can thank heaven for sparing him, because this disease, diphtheria, has taken many children in Sagunto. 100 years ago, it wasn't uncommon for a child to die or to go blind, as I did. There were no vaccinations or antibiotics like the ones that you take today when you have a sore throat or an earache. But don't think I was a sad child. No way. I had the advantage of being quite spoiled by my parents. We were 10 children, and I, as the youngest, was a real rascal. I loved to play outdoors. In those days, children could play safely outside as there were hardly any cars. You could say that the streets were ours. I wasn't afraid of anything. Well, I have to confess that the eye treatments were pretty hard on me. The music you hear is homenaje a Sagunto. And in this one, we were able to hear in Sagunto the sounds of the great old singers coming through the gramophones, through the speakers, like a horn. I remember that the town band used to practice very close to my house. I was entranced listening to the musicians. The music was so happy and bright. Do you know what I really loved? The sound of bells ringing. That ding, ding, ding. Bells can tell us the time of day, or they can announce important events in town. They bring joy, but can also bring sadness when they toll for someone who has gone and will never come back, almost as if they were crying. I like to wake up to the sounds of birds singing. Don't you like to have birds wake you up? Birds have an important place in my music. I'm going to tell you a secret. Painters sign their paintings, poets sign their poems, and I wanted my music to have its own special mark. The cuckoo is my signature. That peculiar bird call was what my wife and I used to listen to on our long walks through the Black Forest in Germany. Let's see if you can recognize the call of the cuckoo in two of my most popular works, Fantasía para un gentil hombre and Concierto de Aranjuez. Did you hear the cuckoo? And now listen to Fantasía para un gentil hombre. I already told you that as a small child I was very attracted to music. When I was 6 or 7 years old, I could play the piano and violin, and I wasn't bad. I was just like any of you and wanted to play and have a good time. Music became a good friend of mine because it helped fill the darkness that surrounded me. At first, my parents were happy that their son was so clever he could play the violin and the piano. However, as the years went by, my parents became opposed to me dedicating my life to music. They wanted me to go into business, but I wanted to continue with music. I don't know why, but somehow I knew that one day I would be successful, even if it took a tremendous amount of work. In life, you have to fight for the things you believe in, and I believed in music. As I said, music was my friend, and a very close one, who was always by my side in happy and sad moments. All I had to do was call, and music would be there for me. I must suggest to you that you should not give in when life becomes difficult. I'm blind, but I was determined that it wouldn't make me inferior in any way. Okay, well, let's remove our blindfolds now. And again, please be careful with your eyes. That's the end of the very first part of the Vision Through Sounds, this little listening segment for tonight's concert. The story goes on for it's about a 40-minute presentation to the students, but that's the first little chapter, I suppose, of the narration. Well, what did you hear? And I do want to also point out that a lot of those musical excerpts that were pieces of music, 99% of them are Joaquin Rodrigo's compositions. He has over 200 pieces. We just kind of know him for the one very famous guitar concerto and a few other great guitar works, but he did write over 200 works for all genres of music. But regarding this narration, what did you hear? Some music clips, the story, some different characters, and what did you feel? How did you receive the communication about Rodrigo's life, not only through the spoken words, but also through the digital audio sounds? Well, and so, to answer the question, let's see. I did just want to mention that I was able to, a couple of weeks ago, as Kirill mentioned, that I was able to be with Cecilia Rodrigo, is a good friend of mine, and her family, and I was able to be with her and her family there in Madrid at the Universidad Complutense of Madrid, which is a very famous and prestigious university internationally. And this was actually the home of Joaquin Rodrigo, was a music historian, a professor there for many, many years. And so this picture on the left is him giving a music lecture to his students at the university. And I was able to be at the university showing this picture and talking about him. It was sort of a full circle moment for me. And then this is a charming picture of Joaquin Rodrigo and his daughter Cecilia. Anytime that I'm with her and doing these presentations and she's watching my work and talking about her father, I always try to give lovely pictures of her and her dad. It's very touching to her. She's 83 years old now, and a lot of times it does bring tears to her eyes still that she misses her father very, very much. But hopefully, to maybe answer that initial question, why am I here and why am I talking about all of these situations before I play this great man's music, I hope that I've reinforced the fact that music is indeed a strong medium for communication, and I encourage you to find ways to include it in your own life. Music is so strong that even those with limited vision, and I argue that is all of us, experience unfathomable depths of emotion and shared sensations when listening to it. It unites all of us. And to this point, I want to strongly conclude, to me, Joaquin Rodrigo's music symbolizes progress and humanity all at the same time. In his music, one can find history, nature, emotions of all types, progressive attributes to society, love, and respect. He truly searched continually for just the right combination of these elements to communicate with others, even though he lived in a world without sight, like most of us have. I personally believe that anybody who is developing the uses of artificial intelligence, which was one of the main topics at this conference, we were talking about artificial intelligence and how we can trust people programming it. Ethics was at the center of the conversations. But I personally believe that if we can just, in the future, whether it's artificial intelligence or other means of communication, teaching, or being with each other, if we use Rodrigo's model, his music as a model, I think we will be better off as a human race. And so that's why I am here today and giving this lecture to you. Do you have any visions for anything in the future? I do. My vision includes bringing the story and music of Joaquin Rodrigo to more people, including those who do not see with their eyes. My vision includes learning more from this particular community, advocating for human rights, equality, and equitable opportunity for all, and forever trying to progress, not only with my research, but with my vision. And you now know what kind of vision to which I refer. Again, I'd like to thank you for coming tonight and participating in this lecture, part of the recital with me. At this point, I'm going to take a little bit of a break and reset the stage. So this will be our short intermission, and we'll come back and have lots of piano music by Joaquin Rodrigo. Thank you so much. called Danza de la Amapola, and it was a piece that Joaquin Rodrigo dedicated to his daughter. The thing that I find interesting about this family is that Joaquin Rodrigo was born on Saint Cecilia Day, and she's a patroness of music. And so Joaquin Rodrigo's daughter's name is Cecilia, and her eldest daughter's name is Cecilia, and that was who this piece was composed for. And then there's yet another Cecilia. There are 4 Cecilias in this family. Usually that happens with men. In this family, it happens with the women. So some of the attributes about Joaquin Rodrigo's music, this is an example of just such delightful, over-the-top, happy music. The other side is like the first piece that you heard in the first half, that incredibly sad. That's the other side of his music. It's very, very dark and very sad. So I'm hoping to give you some other examples of his compositional style. I love all of the pieces of music that Joaquin Rodrigo composed, but I do personally believe that the pieces for the piano have this really unique attribute about them because of his writing and because of the way that he passed along the music. This was his primary instrument, and so it's even that more special, I personally believe. The next set of pieces is from 1926. This is his suite for piano, and I wanted to give this example tonight because it was one of his very first compositions. So he was a very young man and trying to find his way in the music realm, and he gives this. He takes like a Baroque suite by Bach or something, French actually, like from the French clavecin school, maybe from Rameau or one of the Couperin gentlemen. So this idea of selecting these little dance movements together, so you'll hear the rhythm of the dances. The form is the same, there's like 2 parts to the dances, but the language is so Rodrigo. It's very modern. And he has favorite sounds. He likes this sound, which is what we call a minor second. It's a white key against a black key, or it's inversion. My thought is that because he was blind, and I never had a chance to meet him, I started my research on him in 2000, the year 2000, and he died in 1999. So a lot of the information I have gotten from his family and from reading a lot of books. But I think this black and white key thing is because he could feel that. You know, the white keys are lower and the black keys are higher. And so this is a way for him to maneuver around the instrument really quickly. So you'll hear that sound. He also likes sounds of fifths. And their inversion we call the fourths. Those kind of sounds. So this is also parallel to guitar tuning, and so people maybe think that the nationalistic instrument of the guitar has an influence on his compositional style. So enjoy the suite for piano. There are you'll hear some cuckoo calls in the last movement in particular. There's one movement in this, it's the second movement, you'll hear, it sounds like jazz to me. It's the only thing of his music that I can find any kind of like American jazz blues sound in it. See if you can hear it, but enjoy his suite for piano from 1926. The next piece is called Preludio del Añoranza, and he composed this in 1987. It was interesting to me in 1980, so no, that's not the year. He was 80. He was 80 years old, and they were, oh, we need to make these documentations of the maestro before he passes on. And so they have this amazing documentary called Through Lights and Shadows. I would highly recommend it to any of you who could find it on DVD or download it, upload it, whatever. But he lived until 1999, so he lived another 19 more years after this. So we need to get these things documented. But in 1987, he wrote this prelude. It's called the Prelude of Longing. And so this is an example of the maestro's music where he always has, mostly in his piano music, more so I think than for other instruments, but this sense of, for me, it feels like falling or just like no earth underneath you. He does this with some figures that fall down on the keyboard. So this Prelude of Longing, people were wondering if he was writing this, sort of thinking of his own mortality, of what happens in the afterlife. This is a very simple, beautiful prelude. It's very short, but I wanted to give you an example of the sensation of not having any earth below you or anything, a sort of sense of weightlessness through music. piece I would like to share with you tonight on the program is called Al Hombre de Torre Bermeja, which means in the shadow of the clock tower of Bermeja. So I had to go and see what these torres were about, these towers were about, and I found this exact tower in my research, and it's in this town called Benalmádena, which is on the very southern coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Now it is a luxurious resort place. So back in Rodrigo's day, I don't think it was as luxurious, and he was thinking about the very early times of Spanish history. So he likes to incorporate Spanish history into his music. And in the Torre Bermeja, there were these towers that were established during the times of the Moors. So there was an invasion of the Muslims, as you probably know, into Spain. They were there from 700 to 1400 times. And so they had these towers that they constructed. And I thought they would be like big towers, but there were medieval towers that were made out of clay and brick and just, I don't know, maybe 3 stories high. They were not that impressive, with maybe a little lookout tower at the top. But they were not right on the seaside, but a few miles inland so that people could see when there would be invaders coming through the sea, from the Mediterranean Sea. And so you have all of these sort of things in his music. So you hear, like kind of aggressive, wartime music. And then the thing about where this is located, this Benalmádena city, it is so beautiful there on the sea. There are beautiful flowers. The sky is so blue, the sand is just stunning, So you also get, in the middle section, this beautiful sensation of this really beautiful, beautiful place. And again, then the fighting comes, and there's very southern Spain with flamenco dancing. You could have some castanets with this piece, and you hear that sort of rhythmic interest. At the end of the work, there's 5 tolls of bells. Remember, Rodrigo loved the bells. So there's 5 clock bells, and that is to let everybody know that for now everything is peaceful. So you'll hear these little signs throughout the whole piece. I hope that you enjoy this final piece by Rodrigo in the shadow of the tower of Torre Bermeja. just also want to thank you all for being here. I had such a wonderful time at Saddleback College. I am so grateful for Dr. Kleodowski to bring me here. He's been to my university and worked with our students at UTEP. What a beautiful man, a beautiful pianist, and beautiful family. And so wanted to thank him. I also want to thank the tech team here, Mr. Tim and Mr. Matt, and Mr. Elliott, who made the programs for tonight. And all of you, thanks for coming and sharing such a special program to me. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful evening.